Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this episode of The Hypnotist, we're going to be doing a hypnosis session for those that gamble. Now, this particular session is not for those that have a gambling addiction. Gambling addictions tend to have much more reinforced neural pathways, a lot more emotional intensity, and a lot more secondary gain and belief systems built in to that addiction. And quite often for many people with addictions, the addiction isn't really the problem. The addiction is an attempt at a coping strategy to sometimes have more excitement or escape from problems, and sometimes it's a belief system that winning will produce the financial reserves to completely solve all the problems. And a lot of those beliefs aren't true, but addictions are very different from what many people do, which is occasionally gamble, or gamble quite frequently, but it's not an addiction. One of the best definitions of an addiction is the concept of if you want to stop something and it's not as simple as that, you can't just stop, then it's an addiction. You lose an element of control of the process, that you're doing something even though you kind of know that you shouldn't or don't want to be doing it, you're doing it anyway. This is designed, this hypnosis session, for those people that perhaps gamble more than they want, but it's not really a full-flown addiction. It's not really creating negative consequences for their life, albeit there is an opportunity cost that maybe money is being lost through gambling, whichever way. That might be betting on sports events, it might be gambling, cards, casino, that kind of stuff. So it's designed for that. Now the key thing about this and the structure of this is going to be meeting the need of that gambling element. So I believe that every behavior has a positive intention, and gambling is quite exciting. There is that kind of rush of euphoria, if you like, or excitement when you win. So from that perspective, it's completely understandable why we would do something that's quite exciting and has quite a lot of positive emotions attached to winning. But that creates a potential loop for a habit and potentially the early stages of an addiction. I used to gamble quite a lot, not in huge amounts of money, but I would gamble at casinos. I would try and do bets with people that I knew, and lots of other little things that would be an attempt at increasing the amount that I bet, which is really what gambling is. And I virtually don't gamble at all now. And the reason why I don't do that is because for me, the need that I got from gambling, I now get that from investing. Most people that like to gamble are fairly comfortable with the risk-reward ratio, because gambling at its essence is saying, I'm happy to lose everything for the chance of winning more. Okay? Generally in investing, when you buy a share or let's say any kind of asset, very rarely does it go to nothing. Whereas with betting, that happens quite a lot. Anything other than winning, you lose the entirety of your stake. And that's why I feel like investing is a much better vehicle to meet that kind of need of excitement and potential financial gain, but where things are working for you rather than against you. So certain asset classes, for example, like stocks and shares, over time, over a 15-year period, that they virtually always go up in terms of major stocks. In terms of real estate and property and land, Yes, you have blips in recessions and, kind of tight financial crises, but at the same time, generally the trend is upwards. So simply put, if you buy assets, it's very, very unlikely that it's going to go to zero, and fairly likely that you're going to have a positive return. And in certain cases, a dramatic return. If you were to buy Tesla stock, 10 years ago, that was a risky business because nobody knew really about electric cars or how popular they would be. You would have made, an insane return from effectively gambling on that stock. Now, the reason I don't believe that's gambling is that you still have the asset and you can sell that asset whenever you want. Whereas if you bet, the trade is on, you get the outcome that you predict or you lose it all. So this hypnosis session is going to be geared towards meeting the need of gambling and suggesting that investment will meet that same need, but be a more useful way to meet that need. If you're listening to this and you think that you might have a problem with gambling, perhaps even an addiction, or it's just negatively affecting your life, maybe you're using it as a coping strategy, deal with stress and worries, that kind of stuff, there will be a link nearby to this episode that you can book a free consultation call, and I'm happy to talk you through how I would work with you privately. But for now, let's listen to this session. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed, relax, and enjoy. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe in a feeling of calm and relaxation, and as you exhale, just allow feelings of worry or stress to leave your body in your outward breath. That's right. As you breathe in and breathe out, if it's safe to do so, on the next outward breath, just feel that as tension is leaving your body, that it's okay to close your eyes. And notice that with your eyes closed, you're able to provide more of your focus, concentration, and attention to the sound of my voice, and in doing so, allow yourself to notice just how relaxed you're starting to feel. That's right. Deeper and deeper, relaxed. Use the power of your imagination to believe that when you breathe in, you're breathing in this resourceful feeling of relaxation, and that when you exhale, tension, stress, worries are leaving your body in your outward breath, meaning that just by breathing, you're feeling more resourceful and allowing yourself to let go of tension, stress, worries. That's right. Breathing in and breathing out, and as your body relaxes, allow your mind to wander. Allow your mind to wander and wonder as to what it would be like if you were by the side of a large river. And I want you to imagine this particular river has an old style gambling cruise ship, a big boat. You can imagine it with the old-fashioned giant wheels. And I want you to get a sense that this is a place almost like a casino on the water. And I want you to get a sense that you're going in there with the intention to win more than that you go in with. And I want you to decide on a number and picture it in whatever your native currency is. It might be 1,000, 500, 10,000, whatever the figure is. Just know that that is the figure. And I want you to picture that, perhaps in notes in your hand, that you have that much cash in your hand, and your intention is to go into this gambling establishment with the intention of going out with more. And I want you to walk into this cruise ship, perhaps hearing the noises of slot machines, seeing the neon lights. I want you to get a sense that this is designed to encourage you to spend. Maybe you're being offered free drinks, and I want you to get a sense that here in this place there is an expectation that you will gamble, And there you are. I want you to imagine perhaps turning your cash into chips, or perhaps coins that you can put into slot machines. And I want you to imagine that you are playing whatever gambling you tend to play. Maybe it's a card game, maybe it's roulette, maybe slot machines, maybe something else. Or maybe somewhere on this boat is a whole row of screens with different sports events, and you can just choose to bet on the outcome of those sports. And I want you to get a sense of what is happening each and every time you place a bet. As you imagine that you're there in that moment, betting on each and every case, you are placing a certain amount of money, and you are losing that money with the possibility that you get more back than you've bet. But anything other than the outcome means that you lose that stake, you lose that initial stake in that amount. Continue to breathe in and breathe out, and notice that here in this place it's easy to get yourself in a trance state. If you want to see people in a deep trance, just look around casinos or bookmakers and you will see people lost in their own minds, quite often doing things on automatic behaviors. And I want you to get a sense that what if these gambling establishments have enabled you to get yourself lost in a trance-like state where it's so easy for you to gamble automatically. I want you to get a sense that on each and every occasion, some of that initial stake is getting lower and lower. And every now and then you win. And notice the euphoria, the good feelings that come from when you win. Notice how quite often there are sounds attached, perhaps clapping, perhaps it might be on a slot machine, flashing lights and noises that signify winning. And I want you to consider that in this environment, you are being treated like one of Pavlov's dogs. That every time something good is happening, you're hearing that ringing bell, designed to create powerful positive neural associations, powerful emotions linked to the idea of winning, even though you're going to lose more times than you win. I want you to get a sense that this version of you is there with whatever that amount was in this place, designed for two things: to have the emotional response of winning, but also to have that element of coming out of this cruise ship with more money than you put in. Allow that version of you to stay in that place, and then we'll see later if that version of you was victorious and left with more money than when you went in. But just imagine there is another version of you that thought of gambling in a different way, that created the distinction that gambling is where you lose your stake, whereas investing, you hold on to the asset, and the asset has the ability to go up or down in value. Some people incorrectly assume that gambling is investing simply because it has risk attached. But entertain the idea that so long as you hold on to the stake, hold on to the initial bet, then it's investing, rather than gambling where the stake is invested, but then you lose it unless you win. And I want you to get a sense that a different version of you is taking that same amount of money and thinking about investing. I want you to get a sense that that different version of you is perhaps looking at stocks and shares that might be perhaps safer if they're big companies that have good profits, or perhaps more speculative and risky if they're small companies in fast-growing sectors. I want you to get a sense that this other version of you has the ability to get that same excitement, the same excitement they get from placing a bet they can get when they place a trade. But in this sense, they're owning the asset. This other version of you is acquiring assets. And I want you to get a sense that the key distinction between gambling and investing is simply time. I want you to assume that gambling has an immediate, sometimes seconds, sometimes minutes, sometimes hours, before you know the result of that initial bet. Whereas investing can sometimes take months or years before you see the level of return on that investment. I want you to get a sense, therefore, that the excitement that you feel when investing will now be linked to the point where you research and then buy the asset. You make that trade, you make that purchase, and that will feel exciting. And then in your head, you can treat it like gambling in the sense that you can write off that stake. The point where you've bought the asset, just kind of assume that you won't see that money again, and yet you can track your portfolios, track the value of your assets, and then at some point in the future, perhaps that asset is worth 2, 3, 4, perhaps even 10 times the value. And then you can go back to your gambling thinking and think of that in terms of odds. If there was a bet that you could get 10 times the return on your investment, 10 to 1 odds on your bet, but keep the bet, wouldn't that be a bet that you would do all the time? Imagine buying a lottery ticket, but you buy the lottery ticket once and always have the ability to win money, rather than the lottery ticket only being valid for a single week. Allow your unconscious mind to entertain the idea that investing can meet the same need that is there that attracts you to gambling, but with much less risk and potentially much bigger payoffs. If someone was to buy stock in Tesla 10 years ago, they would have made thousands and thousands of times their initial investment. If someone was to buy Bitcoin or certain cryptocurrencies, perhaps in the last bear market, that return could be anything from 5 times, 10 times to 1,000 times their initial investment, and they would keep that stake. I want you to get a sense that you have this ability to make choices. And from this point forwards, there are 2 versions of you. The version of you that wants instant gratification, and the version of you that has that ability to delay gratification. Isn't that what investing is? Isn't it sacrificing the quality of your life for the moment for the possibility of a much higher quality of life in the future? I want you to imagine if someone buys a property, perhaps with an 80% mortgage. Maybe they have 20,000 and they buy a property worth 100,000. They have a mortgage for 80,000. Over 10 years, that property could be worth 2 or 3 times the value. But it's 2 or 3 times the value of that 100,000 price of that property. So they may make 2 or 3 or 400,000, but they were only risking that stake of 20,000. I want you to consider how you would get a similar situation in the world of gambling. The ability to leverage, the ability to have your returns, but in a market where over time there will always be an increase in the value of that asset class. That doesn't happen with gambling, and yet it happens all the time in investment. I want you to imagine zooming out and then looking at these 2 different versions of you. That version of you gambling money on a cruise ship on a river, and the version of you investing. And I want you to get a sense that the risk of losing all the money is much higher when you gamble and much lower when you invest. And equally, the likelihood of getting very strong returns is much higher when you invest and much lower when you gamble. But allow your unconscious mind to create a new belief system that for you, investing is the new gambling. And by changing that one belief system, you open up a future, not just of financial security, but potentially an improved lifestyle and perhaps even financial freedom. I want you to now go back into that floating casino and think about over the years how much money you have lost perhaps in every different gambling endeavor. Maybe gambling on the horses, greyhounds, football matches. I want you to get a sense that every casino you've ever been in, every bet that you've ever placed, and I wonder what would have happened if all that money would have been used to buy assets like property or stocks or shares or cryptocurrency. I wonder what would have happened in that alternative future. Perhaps you would have much higher levels of financial net worth in that different reality, but just allow your unconscious mind to weigh up the pros and cons, to consider the options, and to entertain the idea as to what your future would be like if indeed investing was the new gambling for you. And then it's time. It's time to leave that cruise ship, and whatever you have in your hand is just whatever you have in that hand. Maybe you've lost it all, maybe you've gained some. But the principles of gambling are still the same. Any gambling has an inherent hedge, an element of statistical probability that over time, the bookkeeper, the casino, whoever's making that trade will always have just enough so that they will always win over time. Whereas although there are fees when you're investing and spreads, typically the value of the collective asset class rises over time, dramatically increasing the probability of a high return over time. Allow these two different versions of you to meet, and allow your unconscious mind to perhaps make a decision, or perhaps just to entertain an idea. What if you treated investing as the new gambling for you? And then you realize all of this is just thoughts within thoughts, ideas within ideas, dreams within dreams, and actually you're listening to my voice firmly in the present. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, get a sense that you're in your own physical body right now, firmly in the present. As very soon I count from 1 to 10 to awaken you, you will awaken feeling resourceful, feeling relaxed, feeling happy for absolutely no reason whatsoever, but also with a new idea as to what could be an alternative to gambling. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.